The evening was loud with camera clicks, the kind that made every second feel longer than it was. A grand premiere in the heart of the city, the red carpet stretching under bright lights like a river of fire. Famous faces moved along it, smiling, waving, stopping for interviews. Flashes lit up the night like constant lightning. Keanu Reeves stood at the edge of it all. The crowd cheered when they saw him, voices rising like a wave. Reporters leaned forward, microphones ready. The organizers gestured for him to walk forward into the spotlight. It was his moment. Every eye on him, every lens hungry for his face. But he didn't move. Instead, his gaze drifted to the far end of the carpet, where Ana de Armas stood. She was there for the same event, dressed in an elegant gown, her smile warm, but her eyes a little distant. It wasn't the smile she gave when she was truly happy. This one was different, polished, controlled, as if she was holding something inside. He noticed how the photographers called her name, but not with the same storm they threw at him. Her presence was powerful, but the night wasn't built for her. It was built for headlines, for a single face at a time. And tonight, that face was meant to be his. Keanu took a slow breath. Then, instead of walking into the spotlight, he stepped sideways, slipping past the handlers who tried to guide him forward. A few cameras followed in confusion, unsure why he was breaking the script. He didn't care. He walked toward her. Anna's eyes widened a little when she saw him. "You're supposed to be up there," she said softly, almost as if afraid someone would hear. "Maybe," he replied, his voice calm. "But I'd rather walk with you." The flash of cameras shifted, first confusion, then a flood. The story was no longer Keanu Reeves on the carpet, but Keanu Reeves and Ana de Armas together. Still, he didn't change his pace. He didn't pose, didn't wave. He simply matched his steps with hers. They moved together down the carpet, side by side, their pace unhurried. The handlers didn't know whether to pull them apart or let it happen. But Keanu had that quiet kind of authority, the kind that didn't need volume. As they reached the middle, a reporter called out, "Keanu, why did you change your entrance? What's going on?" He glanced at Ana, then answered simply, "Some things matter more than the spotlight." For a moment the noise dulled. Cameras still flashed, but it felt like the air had shifted. Anna's expression softened, a flicker of real gratitude breaking through the practiced smile. She didn't say thank you, not here, not now, but she didn't need to. He could see it in her eyes. Inside the theater, when they finally sat down, she leaned closer and whispered, "You know this is going to be talked about." He smiled faintly. "Good. Maybe they'll talk about the right things for once." What he didn't know then, what neither of them knew, was that this quiet choice, this single decision to step away from the light, would set off a chain of events neither of them could have predicted. There would be questions, assumptions, even tension from the people who managed their careers. But there would also be moments, rare, real moments, where kindness spoke louder than fame and where walking beside someone meant far more than standing alone at the center. And that night was only the beginning. The morning after the premiere, the world felt different. Not to everyone, of course. Most people went about their day without thinking twice about red carpets or film events. But in certain corners of the internet, in entertainment offices, and in the restless hands of gossip writers, there was only one image they couldn't stop sharing. Keanu Reeves and Ana de Armas walking side by side, looking like they belonged somewhere far away from the chaos around them. Articles carried headlines in soft tones, but the undercurrent was sharp. Why did Keanu step out of the spotlight? Is there something going on? Some praised him for humility, for showing respect, for breaking the usual show. Others whispered about motives, inventing stories to fill the gaps between frames. Keanu sat at his kitchen table, sipping coffee, phone face down. He didn't care much for public reaction, but the quiet that followed such a loud night felt heavier than he expected. His agent called, voice tight but polite. "Keanu, I'm not saying you did the wrong thing, but you need to understand how people work. They'll take silence and turn it into noise." "Let them," he said, his tone steady. "I'm not here to feed them the version they want." Meanwhile, Anna was at home, staring at her own phone. Messages piled in from friends, some supportive, some curious. But there were also the ones from her management, half warning, half strategy. "This could be good for your image, but only if we control it." She didn't reply right away. She kept thinking about the moment on the carpet when he looked at her, not the cameras. She couldn't remember the last time someone in this industry had made a choice like that for her, without expecting something in return. Later that day, they met again, away from the noise. A small coffee shop with dim lighting and a quiet hum of conversation. He was already there when she walked in, wearing a simple jacket and looking like he could vanish into the crowd if he wanted to. "You okay?" he asked as she sat down. She hesitated before answering. "I'm not sure. People are talking, you know." "People always talk," he replied softly. "But the truth doesn't change." She looked at him for a long moment. "Why did you really do it?" Keanu leaned back, eyes thoughtful. "Because I saw you standing there alone, and it didn't feel right. I know what it's like to stand in a room full of people and feel like no one's really with you." Her chest tightened at his words. It wasn't pity, it was understanding. But before she could reply, the door of the cafe opened and a man in a dark coat walked in, scanning the room. His gaze landed on them, and he hesitated before stepping closer. "Sorry," he said, his tone careful. "I didn't mean to interrupt, but last night, what you did..." He looked at Keanu, then at Anna. "It mattered. Not just to fans. To people like me, who are tired of seeing kindness pushed aside for show." He didn't stay for long. He left a small note on their table before walking out. It was just a torn piece of paper with 3 words: "Keep choosing real." Anna picked it up, her fingers brushing against his. "You think this means anything?" she asked. Keanu smiled faintly. "More than we realize." Neither of them knew then that this wasn't just about a single act of kindness. The choice he made had already started to ripple outward, touching lives they hadn't even met yet. And some of those lives would soon find their way back to them in ways neither of them could predict. 3 days after the premiere, the calls hadn't stopped. Not from friends, not from agents, not from journalists who were suddenly just checking in. Keanu and Anna both knew the attention wouldn't last forever. Fame's memory was short. But this felt different. The questions were sharper, the curiosity heavier, as if the world sensed there was more to the story than 2 people walking side by side. Keanu spent his mornings on the motorcycle, winding through quiet streets before the city woke. Riding was his escape. No cameras, no small talk, just the hum of the engine and the wind pressing against him. But even there, at a red light, a stranger tapped his arm and said, "What you did for her, that meant something." Anna, on the other hand, felt the attention in smaller, stranger ways. An elderly woman stopped her at a grocery store and said, "It's nice to see a man stand beside a woman without needing to stand above her." It was the kind of comment that stayed with her long after she'd left the store. One evening they met again, this time at a quiet park on the edge of the city. The air was cool, the trees swaying softly above them. They walked without a plan, the gravel crunching under their shoes. "Do you regret it?" she asked finally. "No," he said without hesitation. "Do you?" She thought about the calls, the headlines, the whispered speculation. But she also thought about that note in the cafe, the old woman in the grocery store, and the way his decision had made her feel like she wasn't invisible. No, she said at last. They stopped at a bench, sitting down as the sun began to sink. For a while, neither spoke. Then Anna said quietly, I think people expect us to be untouchable, to smile through anything, but sometimes it's just nice when someone stands still with you. He looked at her, his expression calm but warm. Standing still can change more than you think. Before either could say more, Anna's phone buzzed with a message from her manager. She read it, her brow furrowing. What is it? Keanu asked. She handed him the phone. The message read, There's a charity event next week. They want both of you there. Together. He raised an eyebrow. You think this is about the cause or about the headlines? Probably both, she admitted. But it's a good cause. Orphaned Children's Education Fund. He nodded slowly. Then we go. Not for them, for the kids. That night, as they parted ways, neither of them noticed the man sitting in a parked car across the street watching them. His camera was in his lap, but he didn't lift it. Instead, he just took notes. His story wouldn't appear in the tabloids. It was meant for something else entirely. In the days to come, that man would become a part of this chain of quiet choices. But for now, Keanu and Anna only knew that the world had already decided to keep watching. And this time, they were stepping into the light together. By choice. The charity event was held in an old stone hall near the edge of the city. It wasn't the kind of place built for red carpets. No glittering lights, no velvet ropes. Just a long path leading to heavy wooden doors and the soft glow of lanterns. When Keanu arrived, the air was cool, carrying the faint scent of rain. He could already hear the hum of voices inside, but out here it was calm. Anna arrived minutes later, stepping out of a modest car without the usual swarm of handlers. She wore a simple dark dress, elegant but unshowy, and her smile when she saw him was real. Ready? She asked. Always, he said, offering his arm without thinking. This time, when they walked together, there weren't hundreds of photographers, just a few, standing at a respectful distance. But even with fewer flashes, their steps carried weight. They weren't here to perform, yet somehow their quiet unity felt louder than any staged entrance. Inside, the event was filled with people who had given years to the cause. Teachers from small towns, volunteers from across the country, children who had grown into adults because someone believed in them. Speeches were given, stories shared. Keanu and Anna sat side by side at a simple wooden table, listening more than they spoke. After dinner, a young girl in a faded blue dress approached them. She couldn't have been more than 12. She looked nervous, twisting the hem of her sleeve in her hands. Hi, she said softly. My name is Lucia. Anna knelt so she was at eye level with the girl. Hi, Lucia. It's nice to meet you. Lucia glanced between them before speaking again. I saw you on TV, walking together. My teacher said it's important when people show they care about each other in public, because it makes other people brave enough to do the same. Keanu's voice was gentle. Your teacher sounds very wise. Lucia nodded. She is. She's the reason I'm here tonight. She told me that kindness can start small, like one step beside someone, but it can go far. For a moment, none of them spoke. The words were simple, but they landed deep. Anna felt her throat tighten. Later that evening, as the event wound down, an organizer approached them. Thank you for coming, she said. And thank you for not making it about you. Sometimes famous faces come and the whole night turns into a show. You two, you listened. That matters. As they stepped outside into the cool night, a light drizzle began to fall. There were no crowds, no shouting voices, just the sound of rain on the stone path. Keanu looked at Anna and said, This is what I meant. Standing still can change more than you think. She smiled faintly. I'm starting to believe you. But in the shadows near the old gate, the same man from before was there again, watching, waiting. Only this time his notes weren't for himself. Someone had asked him to follow them, and that someone had plans neither of them would see coming until it was too late. 2 days after the charity event, the tone of the coverage shifted. It started small, an article here, a whisper there, hinting at things Keanu and Anna had never said, suggesting motives they had never thought of. One headline read, "Is this real kindness or a quiet power move?" Another claimed, without proof, that they were using these public appearances to distract from something bigger. Anna sat in her living room, scrolling through the noise, her jaw tightening. "They don't even care if it's true," she said when Keanu called. "No," he agreed. "Truth isn't what they sell. It's stories that keep people looking." But what they didn't know yet was that someone was feeding those stories, someone who had been watching from the edges since that first night. The man in the dark coat wasn't a tabloid photographer. His name was Nathan Cruz, a freelance investigator who worked for whoever could pay his fee. Weeks earlier, he'd been hired by a client whose name he didn't even know, only a bank account and instructions. Follow them, gather details, look for patterns. He didn't like the job. It felt wrong in ways he couldn't explain, but the pay was too good to refuse. And so, from the premiere to the charity event, he'd been there. In the crowd, by the gate. Never seen. On the 4th night after the event, Nathan was sitting in a dim diner, flipping through the pages of his notebook. He'd written down times, places, small observations. But the more he looked at them, the less they felt like ammunition, and the more they looked like proof of something rare, two people simply choosing to stand beside each other. Still, his client's voice echoed in the back of his mind. Find the angle. Meanwhile, Keanu and Anna decided to meet at a small coastal cafe outside the city. Somewhere the air smelled like salt, and the only sound was the waves. They thought they were escaping the noise, if only for a few hours. But halfway through their coffee, Keanu noticed something. A figure across the street, sitting in a parked car, not moving, not reading, just waiting. "You see that?" he asked quietly. Anna followed his gaze. "Yes. You think it's press?" "Maybe, maybe not." They didn't let it change their conversation, but both of them felt it. That shift in the air when you realize someone is writing your story for you and you're not holding the pen. That night, as they walked back to their cars, Anna said, "What if this stops being about kindness and starts being about control? What if they try to twist it so much that no one sees what it was really about?" Keanu paused before answering. "Then we keep walking. The truth lasts longer than the noise." Neither of them knew that Nathan, sitting in his car with the engine off, had just made a decision. For the first time in weeks, he was going to ignore his client's instructions. The truth he'd seen was worth protecting, even if it meant turning against the person who paid him. The next morning, Keanu woke early to the sound of rain against the windows. He liked mornings like this, quiet, unhurried. But as he poured coffee, his phone buzzed with a number he didn't recognize. "Reeves." The voice on the other end was low, steady. "My name's Nathan. I've been following you." Keanu didn't answer right away. "Before you hang up," Nathan continued, "I was paid to watch you and Anna. I was supposed to find something to use against you, but I didn't, because there's nothing there except the truth. And I think you should know someone's trying to twist that." Keanu listened carefully. "Who hired you?" "I don't know their name, only that they're connected to someone in the industry. Maybe someone who benefits if you're painted as a fraud." There was a pause. "I can give you my notes, all of them. You can see exactly what I saw." 2 hours later, they met in a small parking lot behind a bookstore. Nathan was younger than Keanu expected, wearing a worn coat and carrying a battered notebook. He handed it over without ceremony. Anna arrived soon after, her hair still damp from the rain. She looked at Nathan with a mix of suspicion and gratitude. "Why tell us now?" she asked. "Because," Nathan said, "the first night I saw you together, I thought it was a game. Then I saw you at the charity event. And I realized, if I help tear this apart, I'm just another voice making the world meaner. I don't want to be that voice." The notebook was filled with simple observations, times, places, short notes like "talked quietly," no posing or refused interview to stay with her. There was nothing scandalous. In fact, it read almost like a quiet record of two people making choices that weren't for show. Anna closed it gently. "Thank you," she said. Nathan nodded once, then walked away without asking for anything. Over the next week, the tone of the coverage began to shift again, not because of any statement Keanu or Anna made, but because of what they chose not to do. They didn't fight the lies in interviews. They didn't issue dramatic denials. Instead, they kept showing up together at small events, quiet causes, places where kindness was needed more than cameras. And slowly, people began to notice that the stories didn't match the reality. One evening, months later, they stood again outside a venue. Not a premiere, not a gala, but a community center where children were painting murals on the walls. Anna watched the kids laughing and said softly, "You know, if you hadn't walked over to me that night, none of this would have happened." Keanu smiled faintly. "Then I'm glad I did." She looked at him, her voice almost a whisper. "You turned down the spotlight, and somehow, the light followed us anyway." He shook his head. "Not the spotlight, just the right light." And as they stepped inside together, the sound of the children's laughter rose to meet them, unpolished, unfiltered, and more lasting than any headline could ever be.